የኢትዮጵያን ጠላቶች እንደ ጸጉር ቅማል አንድ ባንድ እናራግፋለን።
Prime Minister of the fascist Oromo Islamic regime of Ethiopia used the language of genocide. The world should pay attention. By Eyassu Epheraim Gebra Hanna, London, December 10, 2025. When the Prime Minister of the fascist Oromo Islamic regime of Ethiopia, Genocidal Abiy Ahmed Ali addressed crowds in Hanna on December 8 during the country's 20th Nations, Nationalities, and People's Day celebration, the message was officially one of unity. But one phrase collapsed that facade entirely. In a widely circulated video, Abiy vowed to remove his enemies, like head-lice, a dehumanizing metaphor that is shocking not only for its viciousness but because it comes from the head of government of a country already fractured by war. After the remark appeared on official channels, it was quickly scrubbed from social media. But the damage was done. This was not a slip of the tongue. Nor is it typical political rhetoric in a time of crisis. In societies experiencing violent fragmentation, describing political opponents or ethnic groups as pests, vermin, parasites, or disease is recognized by genocide prevention experts as a critical warning sign. Ethiopia, where conflict rages or recently raged in Tigray, Amhara, Oromia, and other regions, is precisely the kind of environment where such language is most dangerous. A pattern of dehumanization in Ethiopia. Abiy's head-lice metaphor is not isolated. It follows years of rhetoric that has portrayed groups of Ethiopians as biologically tainted, parasitic, or predatory. During the 2020 to 2022 Tigraywar, human rights researchers documented extensive use of dehumanizing slurs targeting Tigrayans, daytime hyenas, a phrase Abiy himself used publicly in 2018, cancer, invasive weed, virus, junta, and devils, among others. These labels appeared across state-linked media, social media campaigns, and even official speeches. Amnesty International warned in late 2021 of an alarming rise in online hate speech directed at Tigrayans and encouraged the government to denounce dehumanizing language. Superscript 2 Ethiopia Insight and other independent outlets likewise tracked how these metaphors laid the groundwork for discrimination, mass detentions, and ethnic profiling during the war. Superscript 3. The phrase, daytime hyena, deserves special emphasis. In Amharic cultural usage, hyenas symbolize shameless predators, creatures outside the boundaries of moral order. Calling human beings hyenas, and especially daytime ones, signals that they are dangerous even beyond the normal rules of predation. Linguistically, this is intentional dehumanization. Tigrayan scholars and diaspora communities warned from early in the conflict that such language was creating an atmosphere permissive of atrocity. Later investigations, including UN-mandated inquiries, confirmed that mass detentions, killings, and ethnic cleansing occurred alongside hate speech that framed Tigrayans as existential threats. Seen against this background, Abiy's new metaphor, enemies as head-lice, fits an established pattern. It is not a rhetorical escalation, it is a continuation. The historical pattern is clear. The world has witnessed this sequence before. Where mass atrocities occur, dehumanizing metaphors typically precede them. The connections across history are unmistakable. Nazi Germany, Holocaust. The Nazi propaganda machine incessantly depicted Jews as vermin, rats, parasites, and lice. A 1941 poster distributed across occupied Poland read, "Jews are lice, they cause typhus," associating Jews with disease and contamination. In the logic of genocidal propaganda, extermination becomes framed as public hygiene. Rwanda, 1994. Prior to and during the genocide, extremist political and media voices labeled Tutsis as inyenzi, meaning cockroaches, and snakes. Radio television Libre de Mil Collines, RTLM, repeatedly broadcast calls to eliminate cockroaches, a metaphor that helped normalize mass participation in killing. Human Rights Watch later concluded that this language played a central role in enabling genocide. The Armenian genocide, 1915 to 1917 Armenians were described in Ottoman rhetoric as dangerous microbes, contaminating the empire, a discourse that framed deportation and extermination as defensive purification. Across these cases, the pattern is consistent: the targeted group is figuratively stripped of humanity first. The shift from political adversary to biological menace, lice, insects, rats, parasites, weeds, disease, is a powerful psychological step. Violence then becomes recast as sanitation. At scale, that logic becomes genocidal. Ethiopia is not Nazi Germany or 1994 Rwanda. But the mechanisms of dehumanization are comparable, and the consequences can be catastrophic if unchecked. Why Abiy's statement demands immediate global attention. Dehumanization is not simply offensive. It is instrumental. It primes the public to tolerate, rationalize, or participate in violence. Ethiopia's political landscape makes this moment particularly combustible. Tigray remains effectively self-governing after a devastating war that killed millions. The Amhara region is engulfed in conflict between federal forces and Fano militias. The federal state is struggling under economic pressure, internal displacement, and political polarization. In this environment, when the Prime Minister labels his enemies as lice, the target category is ambiguous and dangerously broad. Opponents in Tigray and Amhara and elsewhere collectively represent most of the population. Ethnicity, political descent, and regional identity can be easily collapsed into a single category of pests. That ambiguity is exactly what makes the metaphor alarming. Dehumanizing outgroup language with fuzzy boundaries is one of the clearest indicators of potential mass atrocity, according to the UN Office on Genocide Prevention. What the international community should do. First, document the statement. The rapid deletion of the remark from official channels highlights the need for independent archiving. Video, transcripts, and translations should be preserved by media, researchers, and human rights monitors. Second, demand a public retraction or clarification. Domestic civil society, opposition groups, religious leaders, and Ethiopia's international partners should insist on a formal repudiation of dehumanizing language. Silence normalizes it. Third, activate early warning mechanisms. The African Union, United Nations, and regional organizations should treat the statement as a risk indicator, especially given Ethiopia's ongoing conflicts. Fourth, impose diplomatic costs for hate speech by officials. Foreign governments and multilateral institutions should make clear that dehumanizing statements from heads of state are unacceptable and will affect bilateral engagement. Fifth, amplify counter-speech. Ethiopian community leaders, religious figures, academics, elders, and diaspora voices should speak publicly against dehumanization and emphasize the shared humanity of all Ethiopians. Silence is not neutral. Ethiopia is at a fragile juncture. The country's diversity is a strength, but also vulnerable to manipulation. When leaders describe opponents as parasites or pests, the moral fabric necessary for coexistence weakens rapidly. Genocide is not inevitable, but history shows that the first steps often come through words, the metaphors of infestation and disease that enable people to imagine violence as purification. The world has ignored such warning signs before. It must not ignore them now.
For me, particularly the news of the violence against the women is incredible and something that probably not has happened in any wars or conflict in that region. Maybe a word about what is the aim of Ethiopia. When I met the Ethiopian leadership in February, they really used this kind of language that they are going to destroy the Tigrayans, they are going to wipe out the Tigrayans for 100 years and so forth, which for me referred to very serious human rights atrocities and crimes as well. If you wipe out your national minority. What is it? You cannot destroy all the people. You cannot destroy all the population in Tigray, and I think that's very obvious that we have to react and.
Then one thing that has kept me very busy and very sorry and very frustrated is Ethiopia. Not enough people talk about it. We don't talk a lot about Ethiopia. Yes, from time to time when there is peace discussions, but what has happening in Tigray is the most deadly war. We complain rightly about what's happening in Ukraine, but what happened in Ethiopia is really awful. The figures that we have is that between 600,000 and 800,000 people being killed. Can you imagine? And most of them by famine, not fighting, but by famine, cutting humanitarian support, cutting electricity, cutting any kind of public services, and that for months and months. And I remember that this being done by a government which its president or prime minister is a Nobel Prize laureate. We went to Ethiopia at the first visit of the College of the Commissioners because Ethiopia was a light of hope in Africa, and the Ethiopian government was presented as someone who made peace in Tigray with the Eritreans, and things looked very good, and some months later the war started. You can't discuss politically who is to be blamed for the reason for the war to start, but the result is that for months and months this has been a continuous violation of human rights at a massive scale. And we talk about 800,000 people being killed. There is not such a mortality in any other place in the world caused by war.